Good afternoon, ladies. How are you all doing?
Wonderful. Good afternoon.
I have to look next to me in addition to at the Zoom camera, clearly. We are so excited about this latest episode of Chatting with the Clays. This is, believe it or not, this is episode 8. Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Yeah, this has been just a really awesome opportunity just to share some conversation, talking about faith, God, leadership, all of the above. And I love it because it's just simply a conversation that's recorded and shared, and I think sometimes, we have a responsibility and a duty to not just, preach the word and study the word, but we also have an opportunity and a duty to live the word. And living the word is something that's practical, it's casual, there's humor involved, there's questions involved. We certainly don't have all the answers. And I think these conversations kind of let people into a window of what it means to live the word and to explore it and expound upon it. So I'm really excited about this episode. This is episode 8. And if I'm not mistaken, 8 is the number of new beginnings, right? It is the spiritual, godly number of new beginnings. And thinking about that, Genesis, it's most appropriate, even with Mother's Day, to have 3 mothers here featured in Chatting with the Clays. So, of course, we have my wonderful mother over there, and my wonderful mother over there, my mother-in-law, missionary, sister, evangelist, prophetess. I don't know how they do it. Claressa, Susie Randle over there. And then, of course, my wonderful wife, all of those titles plus some, Karen Clay here. So I'm excited to be joined by the 3 of you all. Now, y'all be nice. Don't y'all jump on me today, because it's just me, okay?
You have nothing
It's
to
just
worry
you.
about. You're all good.
You see that pause and that hesitation all of y'all had?
All the women here with you, so you're all good.
All of y'all pause like it depends. Yeah. So needless to say, with Mother's Day coming up, I thought it would be really interesting just to have a conversation about the true calling and the impact of women. And I know the 3 of you all have also prepared some thoughts related to 3 particular women in the Bible, but let's just open up with a simple question. What do you all feel is the true calling and impact of women in this world?
Well, I'll go first. Firstly, I feel like the truest calling of women in this world is to be fruitful and to multiply. Our calling is to have an impact on our family. Our calling is to have an impact on society. And the impact that we have on our families is raising our children, understanding that we have an obligation to train them up in the direction of their purpose, in their calling, paying attention to what that may be, seeking God as to what that may be, and then raising them in that direction. We're told through the scripture to raise them up in the way that they should go, not the way that society has chosen for us to go, but the scripture tells us to raise them up in the way that they should go. And then ultimately, in raising them up in the way that they should go, we're having a positive impact on society,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think our true calling, the impact that it has on society, I think it is for us to be trailblazers as women and as mentors to our children, to be trailblazers. And I think about Jesus' mother, Mary, on how she was a trailblazer because she immaculately conceived Jesus. So in that, she accepted the prophecy that was given to her. And she had to have dedication to set that example, like you said, Sister Randle, for her children, for her son. She set an example of dedication to God first because she was obedient to the call. So she was a trailblazer in that she was mocked, she was ridiculed the whole time for bringing forth as no one has done prior to her. So I think that really made her a trailblazer for that day and time. She was also a trailblazer because even though she was engaged, and that would be our word today, engaged to Joseph, she didn't put him out there on blast. She didn't say, you know, this happened or that happened before. She just let the people speculate. So she was a trailblazer in really keeping her family, keeping dignity when it comes to her family and her situation. So I think as far as women in society, the impact we have is to be trailblazers.
And I think that women are supposed to add high moral standards to the room that they walk in. Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why women are needed in so many different areas, because we add high moral standards to the room. That's why God wants you to know how to be a virtuous woman. That's why women are needed in the pulpit. That's why women are needed in ministry. That's why women are needed in corporations and the government, in so many different areas, because we add virtue or high moral standards to that area. And then we also bring good news. It's funny because Jesus revealed that he had resurrected to a woman, you know, so that she could take that good news to the disciples. So obviously God is telling us that it's our job to bring good news. And he also literally the good news was delivered by a woman, which was Mary. Wow. So I believe that it's our job to bring good news. So adding virtue and bringing good news is definitely an impact that women have. And I think that's why the serpent went to Eve separately, because he knew that whatever he brought to that woman, that she would bring to her home. Because we bring good news. We bring wealth, we bring high moral standards. So if I go to the woman with gossip and mess and addiction and all of these things, then what can she bring to her home? Maybe I can infiltrate the home through the woman. So it's definitely important for women to remember that they bring virtue and good news to society.
Absolutely. Excellent. Absolutely. Excellent. Well, yeah. Wow. Okay, it's hot over up in here as you open that one up. But I'll tell you though, one of the things that becomes interesting is each generation, and we see, you know, a couple generations of women represented here. Each generation builds on that foundation of their predecessors, on the matriarchy, and they add, you know, something new when it's their turn, right? Based off of your experience, based off of not only the foundation that you come from, but also the new experiences that you acquire. You bring wealth not only to your family, but you bring wealth into the world with you. And you do things a little bit different. And I think that's irregardless and irrespective to gender. But specifically, and we talked about this a couple episodes ago, there becomes this strain in between generations. And it makes me really marvel, because every generation at some point was the younger generation to an older generation. And there's still this tug of war as it relates to generational strain, how people do things, what they do, what they believe, what they don't do, what they believe their role is. So I started with the question talking about the calling and impact of women. Can you all actually talk about the evolution of womanhood, but not how womanhood has evolved? Because I think a lot of people, you know, are quick to point out what's different now versus, you know, the generation and prior generations. But let's talk about what those influences are. Yeah. So what has influenced, in your opinion, the evolution of womanhood?
Well, I believe what has influenced the evolution of womanhood is definitely our music, education, and social media. This is something that's new, so it's influencing womanhood. Definitely music is a big thing that we have to be careful with, because with music, sometimes it can tell women how they should be, and it can tell men what they should expect from a woman. There's secret messages in music, and we have to be careful with that. Just from me being born in 1992 to now, I've watched how music has changed from being so innocent, maybe not that innocent to you all, but innocent to me, to the music now today is not innocent at all. It's very revealing, and it can definitely show women what is expected of them, and it can show men what they should expect from women. So that's influencing womanhood. You know, how you should look, how you should be, your role, your responsibility is changing womanhood. And I also think education, because in our community, Black women are the highest, have the highest rate of degrees. In the world, Black women have the highest rate of degrees. So that definitely changes a lot, because maybe 50 years ago, that was not the case.
Right. Right.
So that influences womanhood as well, because it's bringing women from one location to another.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think those are things that are influencing womanhood.
And I think our civil rights, I go back to that with the, I believe it's the 19th Amendment being passed, and climbing down through history, all the different rights and the amendments that we have been granted as women. That has helped women evolve into the place that we're at today, because back in the 1800s, we didn't have those rights. And that's when we began to fight for our rights back then in the 1800s. And with the rights, even the Voting Act, mm-hmm. and all of that, that helped include us, because at one point, we as even African Americans weren't even considered to be a whole man, a whole person. Yeah. So with those rights, a lot of it helped women evolve. And then we had to fight for equal pay. Mm-hmm. We had to fight for equality on the job, just in the environment that we worked in. So I believe these things were a strong influence and helped evolve us as women too. Now we know that we can be judges. I can look around, and even when I was a teenager, I could see I could see people that looked like me. They were a woman, and they were a woman of color. And so I could aspire to be like them, whereas before that, we could not see that. So I think our rights and things have really helped us evolve into who we are today, because now we know that we don't have to stay in the home and just have children, look after the home, but we know that we can work on a job and keep our home. Mm-hmm. We know that we can forge for laws and rights and still raise our children. Yes. And we can do it with virtue and dignity.
Amen. Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree with everything you all said. And I was thinking about the women's movement. Mm-hmm. And the women's movement, we evolved so much from that. Like you said, the right to vote, the right to work a job, the right to be a CEO of a company, the right to have equal pay, the right to, you have women now who are pastors and successful pastors in churches. Yes. Women, the movement actually gave the women the ability to show what women are really made of. Mm-hmm. That we have something to offer, because really one of the hardest jobs, in my opinion, is running a home. Yes. Being a wife, mm-hmm. being a mother. Mm-hmm. The tasks never end. You making breakfast in the morning. Mm-hmm. You're making, you're cleaning up between breakfast, mm-hmm. and the baby taking a nap, yeah. going into lunch. Now you're preparing lunch. And from lunch, you're cleaning, making, maybe washing, throwing a load in the washing machine, and then you move on to dinner. And from dinner, you go and you feed your family. You may read a nighttime story, and then you move from that to getting the children to bed, and then maybe throwing that last load in the washer, folding clothes, and getting a couple hours of sleep before it can start all over. I mean, I feel like a homemaker's job is one of the hardest jobs in the world, but a homemaker's job has also prepared us
Mm-hmm.
in the evolution of womanhood.
Mhm.
Because when you can master being a successful homemaker,
Mm-hmm.
that ability is what enables you to run a company.
Yes.
You know, that helps you to evolve in running a company. It
Mm-hmm.
helps you to evolve in bringing something to the army, you know, becoming and joining the military. You know, women have brought so much, and then politics.
Mm-hmm.
Women bring so much to the political world. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have women who have ran for president, and no doubt one day we will have a woman president of the United States of America. And I mean, women have evolved so greatly, even into the Me Too, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where women didn't have much of a voice, and women had, you know, when you go way back, even to Bible days, had to contend with so much when it came down to a man. Your opinion didn't matter. You didn't really have much of a voice.
Mm-hmm.
But today, we have the Me Too movement, where you can say, you don't have a right to say just anything to me. You don't have a right to just do anything to me. But I have a voice and set boundaries for myself. And, you know, and men have even gone to jail because women have said, I'm setting a boundary. You know, she has evolved to the point where she can say, you can't say that to me. You can't just say anything to me. You can't just do anything to me. And then women have evolved in the economy. You know, women have had such a strong voice in increasing the economy, bringing money to the economy. You know, there are suggestions that they offer to presidents. And today, presidents are seeking to have women as their running mate because women have so much to offer.
Absolutely.
So that's, yeah.
Yeah, and you all brought forth a lot of depth there, and especially if in some of the comments that we're tailoring there, as relates to you know, what skills are embedded in managing a home, and I think that's something that hasn't been fully appreciated before. And you were saying earlier, Karen, in addition to you know, the virtue and the high standards, and that sort of propensity to seek out good news, there are a lot of skill sets that are completely transferable, but they were devalued, right? They were minimized, and I think, of course, the perspective of what it means to run a home has always been short-sighted, and it's been weaponized against women, you know, throughout the years. But when you talk about resource management, conflict management, dealing with entrepreneurial perspectives, being resourceful, you know, time management, all of those things. Again, you could scale that up, you know, and Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and every other successful sort of entrepreneur and businessman or woman can tell you that those are fundamental skills and experiences that you need to have, and they're completely transferable. But it does take a perspective that grasps a hold of that with pride and say, yes, I know that this translates. And I think this really dovetails into the next question really well. We talked a little bit about some of the strains between perspectives in generations, particularly as it relates to how womanhood has evolved. But then there are levels of conventional thinking, you know, that have been helpful before. And sometimes we dismiss those because we say, hey, it's old school, you know, and if it's old school, you know, and if it's not necessarily what we identify as contemporary or embraced by us or remixed by us, so to speak, then it's obsolete and it's irrelevant. But I do want to walk back and say, are there examples of conventional or traditional thinking that you all have implored and utilized in your lives that have actually helped you succeed and can help other women succeed? I just want to shine the light on that for a moment. Are there examples of conventional thinking or traditional thinking that actually can help women succeed even today?
Well, I think so. Definitely. I can speak on when I became a wife and a mother. You know, it's the conventional things that I saw in my own mom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Titus teaches us to teach women to be chaste housekeepers, to love their husbands, to honor their husbands, to love their children, you know, and pretty much to have a focused life, you know. And it's those things that I saw in my own mom.
Mm-hmm.
And although she worked, we had a very clean house.
Mm-hmm.
We had hot meals. We didn't eat McDonald's, you know, for dinner every day. You know, she came home and she prepared a meal after, you know, working a long day, you know, and then she washed, she folded clothes, she put them away neatly.
Yes.
You know, it's these conventional things that she did that helped me in a little less conventional world when I got married 33 years ago, to pick up those traits and do the same thing in my home. And when I did the same thing in my home, my daughter, who's in a far more contemporary society, she was able to pick up what she saw in me, you know. And I have one example on Saturdays, because I worked every day, but I came home and cooked hot meals for my children. McDonald's was a delicacy, you know, for my kids because they ate hot meals. And she saw on Saturdays that I'll do all my housekeeping, you know, washing, changing the sheets. And sometimes I'm talking to someone on the phone. I got my phone like this, multitasking. I'm on the phone, I'm changing the sheets, I'm cleaning the bathroom, cleaning the kitchen. And then I noticed when she was a little girl, she would be in her room and get her play phone. And she'll hold it like this, snatch the sheets out and say, "Oh, Auntie, what are you doing today?" She would pretend like she was talking to someone on the phone, you know, emulating her mom. So it's those foundational things.
Yes.
So conventional things that was taught that made us wives. It defined us as wives. You know, it defined us as moms, you know, attentive mom, you know, teaching respect, teaching, you know, the song clean up, clean up. Everybody everywhere, everybody do their share. You know, those are conventional things that we did. You don't get to leave a mess just because in your more contemporary life, you're busy. You know, the world offers more things. You got more outings and things you can do. But even in having that, you can't move away from the conventional things that make you a holistic mom and a holistic wife.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. I think that conventional thinking is very peculiar because you kind of have to be careful with conventional thinking. What worked for me and Quentin was the fact that we had similar backgrounds. Both of our mothers were Christians. They loved the Lord. They had similar backgrounds as well. So the fact that, you know, my mom cooked, cleaned, kept a house, and took care of her children, it helped because his mom did the same thing. So that me bringing that conventional or traditional thinking into our home worked because that's what he was used to, and that's what he expected out of a woman because of what he saw in his mom and what I saw out of my mom. That just worked well. But conventional thinking can be tricky if you marry someone that does not come from the same background.
You're stepping on my toes, Karen. You're stepping on my toes.
And I'm gonna let it go, but I'm just gonna bring up Hannah. Hannah was Samuel's mom, and Hannah was in a marriage, and her husband had another wife as well, and that's how it was in the Bible days. And the other wife could get pregnant conventional way. She can get pregnant. She had multiple children for her husband, and she was the conventional wife, but Hannah was not. But Hannah had favor from the Lord. But that conventional thinking hurt Hannah because it made her feel like she was inadequate. It made her feel like that she wasn't good enough, she wasn't worthy, because she was not able to be that conventional wife for her husband. And I wonder how many times we make some women feel like when they don't come from those conventional backgrounds that majority of us may, well, back then it's not common anymore actually,
right.
But some of those backgrounds that we come from, sometimes we can make women feel less than and inadequate and not worthy when they don't come from those backgrounds. So you have to be careful with conventional thinking. And what I would say to those women who may feel like, I didn't have that mom, that cleaned and cooked and did all those things, the Bible outlines principles of a woman and principles of a mother. And you can take those principles and apply it to your life and allow that to make you adequate and allow that to make you worthy and teach you how to be a woman. Even if you did not have the traditional and conventional thing, that does not mean that you're not worthy and adequate, because even though Hannah could not get pregnant after she prayed,
amen,
which was conventional and well, actually in her time, the way she went about it was not that conventional. But she prayed, she went up to that altar by herself in the presence of men, and she prayed and asked God to give her a child, and God gave her a child, and so I think that if you did not have that conventional thinking and you did not have that conventional background that you see some other people in the church or other people in your community have, then just go to the Bible and allow Jesus to teach you how he wants you to be, and let him make you a wife, let him make you a mother, and bring those roles to your home and to your husband.
Yeah, excellent. I'm staying out of the way. Go ahead.
Oh, all I can say is yes, I agree. No, both of you just really summed up the same thing. That's why I said, Karen, you're stepping on my toe. But and again, similarly, because we've had the same background, it's probably why we can speak the same language. But even as you were talking, Karen, I was thinking, even though the question was about conventional thinking can be relative to where you're at and how you were raised. So, you touched on a good point. It may not be what's conventional to us, may not be to someone else who has not had that. If I can digress just a little bit, my mother was the neighborhood mother. All the kids that had, maybe they had strained relationships with their parents, or parents were gone a lot from home, working or whatever. My mom was the mom. The kids would come over and she would give our clothes to the kids that needed clothes, she'd move us over if someone needed to spend the night, and did all of that. But they found solace in our home, that solitude in our home that they didn't have in their homes. And what was normal or conventional in our house, they did not have that. And like you said, Sister Randle, my mom, she, all I saw was a woman who worked, who had high standards, a virtuous woman. And there was 4 of us girls. There's 4 girls and 1 boy. And she was very, very hard on us. She would always, every day was a lesson. Every day you learned multiple lessons. We'd get up in the morning, she'd tell us, don't lay around all day. Especially if we had company that had spent the night, she'd say, girls, don't run around in their pajamas all day. You don't do that. That doesn't look good. Get up and make your bed. If you don't get up and make your bed, if you don't start with a routine for the day, she called that lazy. Like that looks like a lazy woman. We had to clean our house. When we cleaned the house, you had to move your bed and sweep under the bed. Wash walls every Saturday. I'm a little older than you are. I don't know if you did the vinegar and newspaper thing, but Every Saturday, we cleaned the glass. Our front door was a glass door. And we had used vinegar and newspaper to clean the windows, you know. And so, you know, we were taught lessons.
Yeah.
And in our house, that was conventional. You cook, when you cook, you clean up. You don't let the dishes sit in the sink for 2 and 3 days.
Right.
You couldn't even let it sit there for 2 and 3 hours, let alone 2 or 3 days, you know. And you clean clothes, you know. There were 4 of us girls, so we were taught how to launder properly. You don't put jeans in with your underclothes. You don't, you know. So we were taught how to separate clothes, and then you don't just let them sit in the dryer for days at a time. You take your clothes out, you fold them up, you put them in the drawer. So, you know, and thinking, you know, conventionally, everybody doesn't get that same snapshot of what life is, you know. And so even to bring that today, sometimes it's just mentoring another young woman out of a different generation, taking them under your wing and showing them that you love them first. I'm in a different situation where I can the door is open for me to do that a lot. And you know, I find that even when I was a teenager in the church, the older people said, all the young people just don't want to hear. And that's said today, so there's that big generational gap. But I found out, I was the Young Women's Christian Council president for 18 years. And I found out if you just show people love, if you just show the young women love, sometimes you can break through some barriers and that no one else can break through. And I'm gonna share this and then I'm gonna let it go. But I remember one young woman said something as simple as this. I was teaching a class one time and we were going through the Miss Manners thing and washing clothes and keeping your body clean. And I had made the statement that when you wash your hair, you wash your comb and brush. She came back to me, it was months later, and she said, thank you. One of the classes you taught, I don't even know if you understand. She said, but no one has ever told me that when you wash your hair, you wash your comb and brush. Because I said, you're just putting dirt back in your hair if you don't do that. And she said, no one ever told me that. And she said, that's not to take anything from my mother, but no one ever told me that. Well, to me, it was like, that's common sense. But again, that was conventional thinking in my world and in my home. But in hers, it wasn't.
Right.
You know?
And just to add one more thing, I think, you know, our generation, to break the barrier, we have to learn how to listen. You know, love is key. Love is powerful.
Yes.
You know, nothing can defeat love.
Yeah.
But I think we have to listen, you know, and willing, you know, it's like 2 whole worlds. We're a world away from the generation today. So sometimes we have to be willing to listen, you know, and a lot of times young women come to me and they talk to me. And the first thing I do realize is that they did come from something totally different than what I came from. And so I want to hear their perspective, hear how they got to where they are. And one of the first things I want to let them know is that I get it. You know, sometimes people just want to know that you understand how they feel. You know, I really get it. You know, and I think sometimes the younger generation just say, forget it. I don't want to have anything to do with them. They judge us. It's because we won't listen and let them know that we do get it. And we have to remember that we were once young.
Yes.
You know, we have to remember that we did make mistakes before. You know, sometimes we like to show that more perfected side of us, you know, but in order to save young people, young women, young men in a more contemporary society, we have to be more transparent and let them know that we get it.
Yes.
You know, although I was raised totally different than the way you were, I still understand how you feel about certain things, you know. And as a young person, we all have go through puberty. We all go through a time of maybe being a little rebellious. We all go. So although we were raised totally different, there's some things about it that we have to be honest enough to say, I get it. You know what I'm saying? And then that breaks down that barrier and makes them more willing to talk to us. And then we can share what we've learned along the way and maybe mentor them and help them to become a better them.
You know? And what I was going to say is, as a younger woman at 27, I believe that it's our job. What conventional thinking has helped me, obviously, not obviously as in like I'm just great, but no, conventional thinking I value. Women, you said that, you know, as older women, we need to listen and understand, but as younger women, we need to take heed to what's being told us. I'm the type of person that I'm the youngest, so when I saw my brother go through, that's all it took. All I got to do is see an older sibling or whatever go through something, and I'm like, that's okay. I don't have to do that. That is like, has been my motto in my life. I watch, I sit back and I watch and I take heed to what the Lord is showing me. You know, I've seen adults or other people, women, men do certain things, and I take that in and I evaluate it and I say, you know, I don't have to go through that. You know, if, like I was telling my husband, if you are in the yard and you tell me that the murder hornets are right outside our door, I'm going to listen to you. I don't even have to see it. No. The fact that you said it means I'm not going outside. So it's important, you know, and don't let the enemy trick you to make you think that you got to go through it to understand it and to live life. Girl, guy, you don't have to go through it. I didn't go through it. And I thank God for it. And how much further can the young people be if we say, my mama went through that, I'm not going to. My dad, with my siblings, my brother, sister went through that, I'm good. I don't have to go through that. So listen to some conventional thinking, you know, it's a good thing. Prayer, fasting, taking care of yourself, not being in certain environments, you know, it's a good thing. And it has really helped me in my life to listen to conventional or traditional thinking. Not all of it is bad.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you all are hitting some really powerful points. And I would say even across genders, but I'm saying this to amplify the point that you all made and just to really affirm, you know, my agreement with it. Sometimes the struggle becomes people, especially younger people, you know, they go through, and we've all heard this before. Well, there's some things I want to experience myself, right? Well, there's some things that God wants you to experience that are greater, that no one else has experienced, right? And by you foregoing some rights to experience certain things for yourself, you would have the opportunity to experience some things that no one has ever experienced, right? But again, it takes a little bit of give and take. And to the point that you were making, Mom Randle, listening is huge, because sometimes people don't always present the reasons why they reject what they hear. Sometimes they reject what they hear because they feel incompetent, they feel inferior, right? They don't know where to start. Sometimes they don't understand how to make different trade-offs, right? It's like, well, for me to do this and this at the same time, it's easier for me to reject doing that than to say, I don't know how to juggle or balance both, right? So in listening, sometimes you can uncover what those barriers are. And if we take time, whether it's men or women, but from what you all are saying, it certainly sounds like it could be the case with women. If you take time to understand where a person is coming from, then you may identify the barriers first, because I don't believe widely and broadly that conventional and traditional thinking is rejected. I think sometimes it's dressed up in a certain package, and it might even be presented in a certain way. But if you really sit back and say, who wants to be successful?
Right.
Who doesn't want to have to spin your wheels and waste your time? Who doesn't want to have to waste money? Who doesn't want to have their heart broken
Right.
over and over and over again?
Mhm.
You know, those are the commonalities between generations. And then it's saying, well, hey, if we start at what we have in common, then let me show you a path, and then you take from it the lessons and the tools that you need to. So I think what you all are saying is absolutely powerful. And it leads me to another question, of course, right? I got none but questions. You know, we talked quite a bit about motherhood. We talked about keeping the home. And Karen, you alluded to Hannah's story. And I think it's really important to spend some time talking about womanhood versus motherhood, because I think in some subtle ways, sometimes it may come out like womanhood is undermined if a woman is not a mother. So I want to spend just a little bit of time hearing from you all, talking about womanhood and motherhood. What are some of the distinctions between the two? And then I would say part two of that question is address the women who either don't want to, because that's a population out there for sure, or for whatever reason they're unable to become mothers of their own offspring. So can you talk a little bit about the distinctions again between womanhood and motherhood? And then also, could you speak to women who either don't have that desire, or for whatever reason, there may be a barrier or inhibitor that prevents them from actually having children and becoming a mother?
Mm-hmm. Well, womanhood is simply you being a woman. A woman is considered anyone over the age of 18 is a woman. It's an adult. So that's a woman. Motherhood is different in that motherhood is either you have mothered by natural birth, child or children, or you have been that mother figure to a child or children. So just because you're an adult woman doesn't make you a mother.
Right.
A mother is a nurturer and a mentor. A woman is just a grown and adult female. So the difference between that is exactly that you can be an adult without being a mother. I found myself teaching that a lot, that it's okay to be single, to enjoy. I used to teach a workshop that was called Enjoy Your Singleness, because when you're single, you get perks and privileges that you don't have when you're not single. And single mean not necessarily married. It could be you're not single because you have children. You're not necessarily married with children.
Right.
So your single life, there's nothing wrong with being single. I know women that have been single all of their lives and they're fine with it. There's nothing wrong with a woman who has made that choice. Some women just don't want to be mothers. That's okay that you know yourself.
Right.
Because mothering is a very unselfish position. If you're not ready to share your life, you're not ready to be a mother, because you will share your life when you become a mother. Same thing with being a wife. You know, when you become a wife, you share your life. So some people don't want that. And then there's a point in time where some people just aren't ready for that. Is that okay? Both ways it's okay. I don't see anywhere in the Bible that says you're going to hell just because you didn't have children or you didn't marry.
Right. Right.
Nowhere written. So to be single is okay. To be married is fine. I came up at a time where I can say from a personal perspective, I felt like we were taught that if you didn't grow up and get married, you weren't a whole woman. That's how I felt. That's how they trained us. You know, it's like you after you're grown, you become a woman, then you get married, you know, and you have children. So if you don't do that, you're not complete as a woman.
Right.
But living life has taught me differently. Does that mean they were wrong? No. But that was their traditional, conventional way of thinking back then. Back then.
Yes.
So it's okay to be a single woman, and then there are women who cannot conceive. They're unable to conceive for medical reasons or whatever, and they're just unable. Does that make them less than a woman? No, it doesn't make them less than a woman. Right. You know, they're just unable to conceive. There have been a lot of women, and even women in my life that has not had children, and they mothered us. They were examples. They loved us. They mentored us. They treated us just like we were their children, and they never had a child. So, you know, I've seen it both ways. And then there are women that have children. They're not necessarily mothers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, someone else?
I totally agree with that. I think the difference between womanhood and motherhood is the difference between being able to be self-centered, not, you got to phrase that right, self-centered, and the difference between inward looking. When you are in your womanhood, we want you to be self-centered. We want you to focus on you. We want you to use this time with no distractions from family and marriage and life as a married person and a mother to develop yourself. We want you to be a little selfish about who you bring around you, about what you do with your life, about career and your passion and your purpose. We want you to be centered around yourself. But when you become a mother, you can't be centered around yourself. You can't. You can, but you can't. And we want you to be more inward looking, because I hate this idea that when you become married or become a mother, that's the time for you to give up yourself. Do not give up yourself. Please don't. Your husband is begging you and your children are begging you to not give up yourself. Have more of an inward looking perspective. Continue to develop, continue to become better, but look inward and don't be self-centered. I think that's very important. And I don't think you can have motherhood without womanhood. They go hand in hand. Womanhood leads into motherhood. And Clinton was asking the question about speak to those mothers who can't have children or don't have children now. Well, you're still a mother. What is it that God gave you? What is that dream that you have, your passion, your purpose? That is what you're mothering. That is your business, your book, your dream. That's your baby. And I think womanhood leads you to be able to mother your book, your business, your marriage, your family, whatever it is God gave you that is your promise. That is what womanhood leads you to. So that's why you have to, in womanhood, you need womanhood, because you need to be self-centered around yourself. And then that allows you to be more inward looking for yourself as it relates to what you're mothering, because you have to continue to develop yourself. So those are the differences between womanhood and motherhood. There are differences, but womanhood leads into motherhood. Yeah.
I totally agree with you all. I totally agree. Womanhood is like First Lady Clay said, when you reach a level of maturity, the age of maturity. So 18, and some people say 21, is when you reach a mature age, and a lot of time in society, people say, I can't wait till I turn 21, so I can be free to do and to be whatever I want to do and however I want to be. But, becoming womanhood carries a responsibility, because in becoming a woman, you do seek a lot of times higher learning, higher education, You know, you seek career. What's next for me? What am I going to do? Who am I going to be? You know, what's my calling? You know, am I a book writer? You know, am I a business owner? You know, what is it that now that I've reached that level of maturity, what's next for me? And then, and you can be selfish at that time, you know, in those moments of womanhood where you just seek out things for yourself, you know, as a matured adult woman. But then the difference is with motherhood, selfish cannot be a part of motherhood at all. And if a person feels like that, and they can be honest enough to say, I'm just a really selfish person, then they probably shouldn't become a mother. Because you have to be so selfless as a mother, because, you know, we have a responsibility to rear our children, you know, and we want to rear holistic human beings. We want to be able to, as a mom, you know, and sometimes God has given us the capacity to not only mother the children that we've given birth to, but then we can mother other young people. You know, I'm sure First Lady Clay have other people that she didn't give birth to call her mom. You know I do. You know, I've since my kids were in middle school, their friends would come by and say, hey, mom, you know, and maybe it meant that I gave them a hot dog or a little juice drink, you know, and that made them call me mom. You know, God has given us such a vast capacity as women. You know, there's so much that we can offer, but we're pouring out all the time as moms. You know, we're pouring out, we're pouring into, and you become less concerned. And like Karen said, you probably shouldn't. We shouldn't lose ourselves. We shouldn't lose our identity. But it's something about being a mom. It has so much less to do with you, because your focus is so into rearing that person to be the person that they should be, you know. And as a mom, you know, we're nurturers. We like to nurture things, and we like to nurture people, and we like to give that strong level of love. You know, we like to make people feel safe. You know, we like to wrap our arms around them. I was talking, my husband was talking to a person not long ago, and he was saying, and he was sharing with me the things that they were sharing with him. And I said, they need a mama's hug. And I said, and I just really would love to get to them. Because that mama's hug, like the word of God tells us that God is also the breasted one, you know. He wraps his loving arms around us and make us feel safe. And it's funny, when I told him that person needs a mama's hug. She just needs a mom in this moment, although they're a mature adult, living their lives, taking care of themselves, they need a mommy moment. And it's funny because he was like, yeah, well, maybe. When he talked to them again, they said, you know, I had a dream that Susie gave me a mommy's hug. And I felt so safe. I was like, I told you. And so when they called again, they said, he let me talk to them, and they said, I'm looking forward to that mommy's hug, because I realized that's what I need. That's what I'm missing. So women, you know, motherhood brings so much, you know, it brings, it feel like. That's why when you're having children, when they're young, they tell you to rub their little legs, sing to them, talk to them. You know, there was, I think Sigmund Freud, I think that test where they had a baby where the mom held the baby when she fed the baby. And then they had other babies where they just propped the bottle up and left them in a baby seat. And both babies were being fed. But they noticed that the one baby that was left in the chair, and they put a blanket under the bottle to feed them, began to decline in their health. And the baby who the mom held and looked at her and said, oh, my precious baby, well, the baby ate, grew, and was more healthy. So mothering offers so much, and motherhood is needed. It's needed in the church. It's needed in society. It's needed in school. It's needed in the neighborhood. You know, and that's why when we have an opportunity to offer, you know, we should be able to open ourselves up and offer a mothering moment, you know, because motherhood is so powerful.
It is.
It's powerful. Yes.
You three spoke, I think, very, very well and thoroughly there. And I heard a common theme, just talking about sensitivity, talking about benevolence, you know, the spirit of thinking about and looking after others, the ability to empathize. And those are things that, again, stretch far beyond the domestic capacity, that stretches far beyond our family structures. And those are things that are just needed on so many levels. And again, you know, for those that, you know, choose that they do not want to have children, you know, we need more sensitive people in corporate America. We need more sensitive people in our school systems. We need more benevolent-minded people in our government. We need people who have just, I think, what is really, really innate and spiritually gifted to women in a very unique way. Not saying men don't have it, but it's very, very unique in the way that it's represented in that mothering sense. You know, we need that in all areas of life. And I think truly, when you even do research and you see, you know, Fortune 500 CEOs and CFOs and COOs, there are those that are running orphanages. There are those that are, you know, running pediatric hospitals that aren't able to bear children, and it's fueled their passion, you know. So we certainly want to make sure that the enemy doesn't, you know, put this perspective in front of a woman that says, if you don't physically bear children, or if that's not your desire, that your impact has been limited, you know, and something's wrong with you. You know, you're not, you know, really a woman if you don't choose, you know, to pursue, or if you can't, you know. I think there's so much to be said from you all's comments of what those benefits are and what those characteristics and traits are, and how much we need that as a society. So I just underscore that. But I also just want to get to my sort of final question here, and I think especially on Mother's Day, it's always a running struggle to make sure that in this society, we fully appreciate every member of the society, everyone who has a seat at the table, everyone who is contributing and functioning. And again, I think, you know, in some instances, there's expectations that naturally fall on mothers, right? And along with that, sort of the reciprocal is the unappreciation, you know, that's tethered to that. You know, I expect certain things because you're a woman. I expect certain things because you're a wife. I expect certain things because you're a mother. And that expectation sometimes materializes into unappreciation, right? And I don't necessarily think that's always the intention, but I want to make sure that you all have space to offer some encouragement to mothers and to women who may not be mothers, because this is that time of year, you know, where that pressure and that weight and that stress can mount up. And I certainly don't want to close off this episode without you all having the opportunity to speak into women, and also speaking to women who are mothers, and just share sort of that love and that appreciation, and address some of that pressure and weight they could be feeling around this holiday, and maybe not around the holiday, but throughout the entire year.
But you know what, I think being a mom, it does come sometimes without an appreciation. And like you said, not purpose, you know, but that's mom. Mom can do this, you know, or that's just Mary. I mean, that's what she do. She does it so well, you know, that a person doesn't really always see the level of sacrifice that person is really making, because you may make what you do look easy. You know, a mom's work or a woman's work is really never done. It's really never done. You know, you just pause to get some sleep, and you get up the next day and start all over again. Whether it be for your children, for your husband, for the ministry, for your job, for the community, for serving, you know, it's always something to be done. But I think the Proverbs 31 tells us that her children would grow up, you know, one day and called her blessed. And it talks about how her husband, you know, praises her in the gate, you know. And then I even look at the story of Ruth with Naomi. Naomi was really bitter. You know, things had really went wrong for her, just like so many women in society today. You know, all of your efforts, and then it just seems like life deals you a bad hand of cards. You know, I can't win for losing, you know. And then Naomi, her husband had died. And then her 2 sons had died, you know, and you know, sometimes when you lose your husband, you rely on your adult children, you know, to help you out a little bit in life, whether it's cutting the grass or, you know, fixing something in the house. But she had lost it all. She had none of that. So she decided to go on to her family, and she admonished her daughter-in-law to just go back to your family. You know, you don't have a husband, but you're young enough to go back and start again, you know. But she had pretty much given up and became quite bitter. But she did receive a reward, because when her daughter-in-law, Ruth, it had to be something about that woman, Naomi, that made Ruth say, you know what? Your people are going to be my people. Your God will be my God. Wherever you go, I'll go. It had to be something about that woman that maybe she had forgotten about herself.
Wow.
You know, in her moment of bitterness, in that low moment of life, you know, that can happen to us all. But that daughter-in-law saw something about her that said, I want to be devoted to you. I want, in fact, the God that you serve, Israel's God, I want that God to be my God. You know, sometimes we say, I want to serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She wanted the God of Naomi. So she followed her, even in her bitter state, even in her low state. And from that, Ruth decided, well, I'll take care of us. You know, I'm the younger one. I'll go gleaning in the field. I'll make sure we have food to eat, you know. And her mother-in-law said, okay, you know, go right ahead. And from that, her reputation of one as being such a devoted young woman, and a reputation of being a loving and committed young woman to her mother-in-law was noticed. It was talked about. And she was noticed by a rich man, a prominent man. And he saw her gleaning in the field. He heard about who she was. And he gave her the best of things in the field, you know, back then, the grains and everything. And from that, although life had dealt Naomi such a bad card, she had a moment where she said, well, if this man who she knew of has noticed you, then he's going to have a big party. And sometimes we have to watch the advice that we give, and sometimes more contemporary advice doesn't yield the same thing that more conventional advice gave to Naomi and Ruth, when she said, he's going to eat a lot at the party, he's going to drink a lot at the party. So when he falls asleep, you know, I want you to just lay at his feet. You know, a more conventional approach to being noticed by a man, a more conventional approach, you know, than saying, you know, entrapment, using entrapment. She didn't use that. She didn't give that type of advice. But she said, just lay at his feet. You know, he's already noticed you. So it had to be something great about Ruth as well. Maybe she was real, you know, curvaceous, beautiful, but she was noticed, and he had heard about her. And when he woke up and he saw Ruth at his feet, he inquired of her and everything, and the story goes on, but ultimately he married her. And him marrying her ended up being such a blessing to this bitter woman that thought, you know, no one cares about me. Maybe, you know, life has dealt me some tough things. You know, I tried to be a great mom. I tried to be a great wife, but nothing worked out for me. Down the line, I think if you stay the course, You know, when you stay the course, something will work out for you, you know, and God honored Ruth for her dedication to her mother-in-law. You know, and I think God honors women and for the sacrifices that we make, and blessings will come along down the line. And she was blessed. This man married her. She gave birth to Obed. Obed fathered who? Jesse. Jesse brought about David. And from that lineage came Christ. So, you know, the blessing did come, you know, and so I think sometimes we want to receive our reward too soon at times, you know, sometimes, you know, but it'll come, you know, just as it came for Naomi, you know, it'll come.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you want to go, Karen?
It's up to you, Mom. You can go ahead.
Okay. And again, to encourage women that are mothers, it, like I said, it is an unselfish position. I used to tell my children all the time growing up, you didn't ask to be here. And because they didn't ask to be here, they didn't ask to be born, it's my responsibility to take care of them. None of us chose our parents. And I'm sure if we had a choice and we could choose our parents, it would look a lot differently. So for parents to, and not in a good or bad way, I'm just saying, you know, we all have like this thing in our head that we think things should go a certain way or look a certain way. So because the children didn't ask to be born, it's our duty and our obligation to do the best that we can do for them and do the best that was dealt to us. And so that's what, as a mother, that's what I've always tried to do. And I told my children all the time, we don't always get it right because there's not a book, there's no set guideline on parenting. I don't care how many books are written. I don't care how many professionals say, do it this way. You cannot parent by a book. And so all of us are parents for the first time. And just to know that you did the best that you could do with what you had, that's where your greatest reward is. I have no regrets as a mother. No regrets. Are there things that I say I could do probably differently now that I'm older because I'm wiser? But I don't have any regrets because I gave it my best shot, so to speak. I did the best that I could. And I loved my children. And that's all that God requires for us to do. And for the single woman, I think you said even encourage them. If that is your desire to have children or to be married, pray and ask God. I've been on the other side too. I haven't been married all of my life, even though it'll be 40 years this year. It's not all of my life. I was a single woman at one time. I was a single mother at one time. But I prayed and I asked God to give me a saved husband. And I made that sacrifice. It was a sacrifice. And because the guy that I really loved, that I thought I was going to marry, I had to let him go because I said, Lord, I'm going to trust you. But when I let him go is when the Lord saved him. And when the Lord saved him, we were married, you know. So again, the same man that I'm married to now, I want to make that clear. But I had to let him go and let the Lord deal with him. I could not save him. I could not make him be saved. I had to let God do it. And the same thing, I think Karen said even earlier, if you let the Lord take control and let the Lord do your work and consult the Lord, you can't go wrong. That's who I wanted as a husband, but I couldn't change him. I had to let God do it. And so I look at Mary, the mother of Jesus, and her dedication to God. She was dedicated to God, and she did two of the hardest things that a mother could do. She saw her baby in, and we know labor is not an easy thing. Anyone that's had children, even if you had them quick, labor is not easy. Childbearing is not easy. It takes a toll on your whole body. And it is the closest that a woman ever comes to death, because she could bleed to death or anything could happen. So we know childbearing is not easy. She saw her baby through, and then she saw her baby leave this earth. Yeah. She stayed dedicated to Jesus from the time she had him until the time she left the earth. Mm-hmm. That's dedication and that's love. Mm-hmm. But she kept her commitment to God. And God is what kept her after she saw her baby leave the earth. But you alluded to, Sister Randle, the scripture, and that talks about in Proverbs, about her children will rise up and call her blessed. Before Jesus left this earth, he told his brothers to see about mama. Yeah. And if you do the right thing and you love your children, if nothing else, they're going to see about mama. And see about my mama. You make sure you take care of my mom. When I leave here, y'all take care of my mom.
That's right.
So he fulfilled the scripture. He said, anyway, he didn't come to destroy the law. He came to fulfill the scripture anyway. Mm-hmm. So we saw him fulfill the scripture even to the end. Mm-hmm. And he said, see about my mother. You know, he loved his mother. Her child rose up and called her blessed. Yes. So that couldn't have been an easy thing for her as a mother. You know, it had to be hurtful. But she knew what her job was. Her job was to bring the Savior of the world into the world. Yes. And then she had to trust God, because she knew she was going to lose her baby one day. But don't you know that would have been a hard thing, knowing I would have been trying to hold on to my baby and hold on to my baby, you know, that he gave his life and sacrifice for the sins of the people. But she agreed with the Lord. And that's the reason why God kept her. He didn't let her lose her mind. He didn't let her go into a depression or anything like that. Because why? Her first love was to the Father in heaven. Mm-hmm. And so when we keep our commitment, God, I gave all three of my children back to God. We call it christening. Yeah. And a lot of times it's just a rite of passage and a ceremony. Yeah. But that was the first time that I remember myself making my motherhood spiritual. Mm-hmm. I wasn't married then, and I wasn't saved then. Mm-hmm. But when my oldest son, when he got christened, when I stood at that altar with that baby, I said, wait a minute. When the pastor read what he read out of the little black manual, and he talked about giving your baby back to the Lord. And I thought about that, and I'm like, wow, I'm really saying something here. This is just not a ritual. Right. This is just not a ceremony. Mm-hmm. I'm really giving my baby back to the Lord. So Lord, I'm giving him back to you. I want you to protect him. I want you to save him. I want you to keep him and his children. So that was my first encounter really with the spiritual part of motherhood. Mm-hmm. And when I gave all three of my children back and stood at that altar with those children, and the pastor prayed the prayer and he said the words over my children, I realized how spiritual this was. And I'm like, yes, Lord, I really want you to keep my children, because I don't want any hurt, harm, or danger to come to them or their families whenever they have children. Yes. So, you know, I would say by way that keep yourself, keep your heart and your mind right, keep to God. Yes. And when you do that, you can't go wrong. Yes. You know, I may not have been able to have everything that I wished I could have had. I may not have been able to give my kids all that I wanted to give them, but I gave them the greatest thing, and that was love. Amen. I couldn't give them no more than that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's beautiful. I totally agree with everything you guys were saying. It's so easy in life as a woman and a mother to feel unappreciated, to feel the weight and the pressures of life. It can cause you to feel really sad and down. life just happens. Things happen, family matters happen. It's a part of life. But one person that I think was really, really taught us a lot, and it was just a very powerful moment, was Hannah. I've been talking about Hannah all day, but Hannah, she had this situation, as you guys know, you should read it, 1 Samuel chapter 1, but she had this situation where she was so sad and so down and so distressed because the cards that life had given her. Her womb was closed by the Lord. She could not give birth. And her husband would come up to her and say to her, "Why are you so down? Why are you so sad? Why do you weep?" He said, "Why don't you eat?" And I think that is really important to highlight, because he asked her why she didn't eat, because he actually was giving her a double portion every year than what he gave his other wife and all her kids. Could you imagine that? A double portion for one woman from what his other wife and her kids got. One woman got a double portion of that. And he asked, "Why do you weep? Why don't you eat?" And that's important because God gave her this favor, this double portion, but because she was so sad from what life had given her and dealt to her, that she could not eat. But I really believe as women and as mothers, God is calling us to learn how to eat while weeping. Because that is the only way that you can get through this life. You have to learn how to eat while you weep. I'm so tired of not being able to enjoy the favor of God and the double portion that he gave me just because something in life has happened. I can't enjoy the double portion of my husband. I can't enjoy the double portion of being a mother. I can't enjoy the double portion of my career, of the gift God has given me, my purpose, my promise. I can't enjoy because I'm weeping, and I can't eat while I'm weeping. But God is calling us to learn how to eat while we're weeping. And the way Hannah was able to master this is that she went and she prayed. She prayed and she didn't care how it looked. She went to that altar and she said, "God, if you will remember your maidservant, I promise that if you would give me a child, I will give that child back to you." And she walked away with confidence, and they were like, "Are you drunk? What is wrong with you?" Nope. She learned how to eat while she was weeping. And I just think that that's so important in life, because life happens. Things happen. You may not feel appreciated all the time. And that hurts. You may not feel adequate. You may have so much pressure on you. You may have so much weight on you. But God is calling you to enjoy the double portions that he has given you, the favor that he has given you while weeping. And that is something that is very, very important, I believe, to eat while weeping.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yes.
Excellent. That was, I'm not even a woman, and I'm encouraging, uplifting you all shared, but I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. I got notes to prove it, but I think especially on this Mother's Day, this certainly was an ordained and sanctioned conversation. I'm grateful that the three of you all shared your time, shared your stories, shared some of your wisdom, and I firmly believe that, again, this is going to be impactful for all sorts of women, mothers, young women who are coming up, older women who are looking back over their lives and they're still imparting to the generations. And this is the kind of unity and the kind of collaboration that God designed from the very beginning. This cloud of witnesses that we have around us is so great. And I admonish each and every person across gender lines, racial lines, across generational lines, really take an opportunity to listen and to learn. And whether it's your story or not, I think there are certainly morsels that are healthy and fulfilling for us if we were just to sit down and do just what we did today. And that's talk, and that's listen, and that's understand, and that's try to connect and relate. But needless to say, our time has wrapped up. Thank you all for joining us for this episode 8. Special happy Mother's Day to you, Karen, my happy wife and my son's mother, my mom over there, Mom Clay, first
Thank you.
mother-in-law, my mom, Sister Randle, as they would know you. God bless you. We appreciate the three of you. And for everyone who's watching, you know what I'm going to say, hit the notification bell, follow and subscribe this particular channel. There's content on Facebook with the sermons, with the Miracle Central sermons, the Miracle Central Bible studies and Bible institutes. And then, of course, we have this Chatting with the Clays. So hit that notification bell after you subscribe and tune in again to our next episode. But thank you all for your time and happy Mother's Day. Love you all.
Thank you. Happy Mother's Day. I love you, Karen. Happy Mother's Day to Randle. And happy Mother's Day to my mother, who is 83 and a breast cancer survivor. I love you.
Happy Mother's Day
Happy
to
Mother's
my
Day,
mommy.
Yes.
Yes, and my baby girl.
Yes. And my baby girl.
Yes.
My baby girl. My baby girl is working today.
All right,
So
until next time.
Yes.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you
too.
Bye-bye.